Welcome back to ReadingBear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, "Couldn't help me out with a simple call?" Okay then. People really dislike it when you treat them the same way you treat them. I work in maintenance. My boss is an idiot who always steals my thunder, takes credit for my work, throws me under the bus to make himself look good, and can't fix a goddamn thing to save his life, so I have to do it. My whole department knows this, but the people in charge don't. Part of my duties are actually, according to a job description, his job, such as checking vendor inspection reports for fire alarms and sprinklers systems, equipment PMs, water reports, etc. Lately one of our vendors has been pencil whipping reports and I found it. It wasn't a big deal but saved us some deficiencies with the authority having jurisdiction. Then another vendor tried to screw us. I found the errors and saved the company about $3,000 overall, not a lot but enough to earn some brownie points. As always, he took credit for it. Shortly after that we had an ice storm that took power out to half the town. The half where I live. On snow days I'm supposed to be in with him at 5 a.m. to clear our office walks. But without power to trigger my alarm, I overslept. When I woke up to birds and sunshine I knew I'd screwed up. Drove to work and walked straight up to him and apologized in front of co-workers. Boss was upset. And he proceeded to light me up verbally, being a loud, condescending idiot about it. I asked, "Why didn't you call me?" To which he responded, "It isn't my job to be your babysitter." I just nodded, apologized again, and walked away. I also stopped checking his reports. Stopped looking up info on my personal phone for him. He's got a company smartphone he can't figure out. I stopped reminding him of his personal and professional appointments, too. A few weeks later he had some major meeting with some of the directors. One of the topics was some discrepancies in the reports that the authority having jurisdiction found. My boss forgot about his appointment and took a lunch meeting, which means he just went home at lunchtime. I know, because I take care of the vendor meetings. When I was asked where he was I blew him in. I think he's at home today. When he was called in, he yelled at me, in front of the same co-workers as before, "My desk is in a cubicle farm well away from the rest of my department for whatever reason. Why didn't you remind me of my meeting? Why didn't you check my reports?" Etc. etc. To which I got to smile and give it right back to him. Less than boss's name greater than, "I'm not your babysitter." I really thought he was gonna lose his crap. But he just fumed. Got silent. Then walked away. The next one is titled, "Threaten Me, You Pay." One way or another. I used to work for a company that rented furniture and appliances with no credit checks. My job was to get renters to make their payments, or if they couldn't, arrange to have them return the products. The place where I worked was fairly remote. We basically served 4 small towns, 2 of them 2 hours drive away from the store. One of the towns was located next to a state prison, so many of our customers were ex-cons who needed to furnish their homes for cheap after getting out. Most of them were good customers, but enough of them tried to use scare tactics that I quickly got inured to them. We also had a customer who was a sheriff's deputy. He liked renting stuff because it meant he and his wife could redecorate whenever they wanted. One day, a guy comes in and buys an expensive leather living room set for cash. When the guys delivered it, they saw that he had a huge, brand new house on several acres of land. Knowing this, the next time he came in, this time to rent, my manager let him rent pretty much an entire house full of stuff. He never made a single payment on it. He lived in one of the towns 2 hours away, so I had to try to collect over the phone, mostly. I kept expecting him to just change his number, but he never did. Instead, he'd answer his phone and curse and threaten me, asking if I knew who he was. I didn't, but I found out a couple of months later. This guy was the #1 drug dealer in his little town, so we'll call him DD from here out. It was a pretty open secret, so we heard this from several other customers. Now, this wasn't just about the money and my collection numbers. The guy had threatened me. Normally when this happened, I'd just drive to the person's house, which was usually a trailer, to call his bluff, knowing that our delivery truck could crush a trailer if things turned violent. It never did though. That wouldn't work on DD, since his house was brick and surrounded by a brick wall, so I formed a plan. The next time our deputy customer came in, I asked him if he knew of DD. I did not explain why, but the deputy probably suspected that DD owed us money. He said he didn't know DD, but he could check if the guy had any outstanding warrants. That seemed unlikely, since DD was pretty easy to find in the town, but I said sure, check for me. DD had a bench warrant for a failure to appear in court for a traffic ticket. The deputy asked if I had DD's address, and I gave it to him. Our contract specifically said that we could release customer info to law enforcement in the event of non-payment, so this was not illegal or a violation of policy. The deputy couldn't get a search warrant for a traffic violation, but he could wait until DD left his house, pull him over, and arrest him. Unfortunately, DD didn't leave home often, and the sheriff's department was spread too thin to stake him out for the time required to catch him. Plus, since DD's house was on the outskirts of town, it would be hard for the cops not to be seen, anyway. I was going to have to give the cops a little help. I started letting customers from that town know that if they saw DD and let me know, I'd give them extensions on their payments. I was allowed to give 2-week extensions at my discretion, and people always like being allowed to put off their payments. It took less than a week before someone saw DD going into the town's only movie theater. Perfect. I called the deputy, let him know, and he had plenty of time to get there and catch DD leaving. Since DD had a warrant, the deputy could arrest him on the spot, and an arrested suspect was automatic probable cause for a search of the vehicle. Naturally, the cops found drugs in DD's car, which got him a warrant for his house, where he had tons more, and DD went to prison. Since there was stolen property, our stuff, in the house when they searched it, the cops called the rightful owners and allowed us in to collect it, too. The next one is titled, Theft Isn't Victimless, and yes, I did take it personally. This was about 2 years ago while I was living at my buddy's place. His place wasn't in the best part of town. So theft happens all the time, and for the large part most of these crimes are met with a "sucks to be you" attitude from the police, who then create a report and forget anything happened entirely. Okay, so I wake up early on Thursday morning with a call from my roommate who was running to work at 5 a.m. and he explains the detached garage has been broken into. The thief broke in through the window and stole a bunch of stuff, with highlights being Milwaukee drills, motorcycle jackets, and the receiver, and the sub from one of those surround sound systems in a box, packages deals but leaves the speakers around the rest of the place. Saying I was livid is an understatement. I work hard for my things and have no intention of replacing them, so some dick can sell them for a very small profit. So for roughly the next 4 days my focus is entirely on this, and you'll see why shortly. So, I know the chances are slim that I will ever find my stuff, but hey, it can't hurt to look for it on the common online sales places. I used eBay searching local sellers only, and I put alerts on Craigslist, an extremely handy feature, and I tell my roommate to keep an eye on Craigslist since he has a little time. So fast forward to Friday, my roommate calls me up and tells me he thinks he found our stuff on Craigslist. I pull up the ad and sure as shit there it is. This beautiful not too bright gentleman had taken all the stuff he took from us and put it into a single ad in the barter section of Craigslist. He even added the model numbers, not serial numbers, making things very easy to identify. The giveaway was this cheap surround sound system for which he only had the receiver and the sub, and after a quick search reveals this particular system is only sold as a package. You can't buy the single components, so this was definitely our stuff. I call the police, thinking case closed, but guess what, they don't care that I found this stuff on Craigslist, and after about 20 minutes of complaining on the phone with non-emergency, they ask me what they want them to do. I say, send a car over here, I want to speak with someone directly. So they reluctantly send a car with a very nice officer, she was really nice, who runs the number associated with the Craigslist ad, and guess what, he's got a rap sheet a mile long and has been arrested like 10 times for theft. With the break in the case, I think I'm home free. But nope, the cop can't do anything. The investigator needs to take care of this, she says, and leaves. So I call the investigator, who doesn't work on Fridays. I ask who I can speak with, so they send me up to the investigator's team line, to which no one answers at all. I try again on Saturday and learn investigators don't work weekends at all, and I'd have to wait until Monday before I can talk to my investigator. Good thing crime doesn't happen on weekends, otherwise cops' weekends would be in trouble. So I call on Monday and Sergeant drags his feet, is out sick. It was at that point I was done trying to call them. I drove to the police station and demanded to speak with an investigator. I mentioned to this new investigator the situation and the name of the guy who was in the Craigslist ad, and the cop knows him very well and has arrested him on a couple occasions. The cop is confident the police can now help me since I've already done all the dang work here. Finally the cops tell me to make a meeting with this guy and let him know when and where. So again the work is on me, and to meet this guy, thanks police. So I text him a few times with no response, then I call him and joke around and express interest in a variety of items, most of which are mine but a few that aren't. Since simply asking for the things from one of the victims is suspicious in my mind. So I tell him I'm Christmas shopping. I then say I'm from out of the area and ask him to pick the location, and he lists off a few places, one of which is a grocery store within eyesight of the police station, so I pick that and laugh to myself at how this is turning out. I call the cops, let them know the deal is on and when and where it is. They say they'll be in an unmarked car and that I should take my wallet out as a sign to swoop in to make the arrest. So I pull into the parking lot. I see no cops and I stop and wait. I think the guy's a no-show when he finally shows 10 minutes late. My heart's pounding at this point. I get out, meet the mastermind criminal and shake his hand. He proceeds to pull out my stereo, then my drills and a few other odds and ends, and before I can get my wallet out, a gold Toure speeds in and out population 3 cops with guns drawn and cuff the guy. When this happened I just turned around and walked away for a second while they put him in the car. The lead cop asks me if this is my stuff and I say yes, it matches with the previously provided, very detailed, description I gave the police. All the while the guy in cuffs is yelling that's my stuff. Finally the cops get the warrant for his apartment, find the rest of all of our stuff and a few other people's things. And I have all my stuff back by Wednesday the following week. He received 1.5 years in a state penitentiary for his efforts. I kind of fixate sometimes, and he got unlucky by stealing from someone who didn't just claim renter's insurance. The next one is titled, The Misdealings of a Wife and a Husband's Revenge. Let me first start out by saying there are no saints in this story, but clearly, I have sided with one. Jack and Jill have been married for 5 or 6 years and close to the family. Jill has struggled with a methamphetamine addiction, but has had periods of being clean. They now have a sweet 4-year-old daughter. There is a lot of family support, but Jill has been distancing herself from family for the last year. Very much the sign of the meth user, but she is clever and has mostly everyone doubting reality, passes P-tests, always has some alibi, etc. For the last 6 months, she finally got a job. A real job working on computers, supposedly. But Jack and the family have never seen a paycheck. Nor will she give the address of where she works. Jack's truck was broken into, let's say, 4 weeks ago. Jill went to JCPenney's in Jack's truck, shopped, came back to the truck and the door was broken into and Jack's gun was missing out of the lockbox. She called the cops and filed a report. I heard about this and immediately became suspicious of Jill. But, well, it's too early for me to say anything, because some family might be offended by my allegations. But I still tiptoe around the subject. Jack is also suspicious, but kind of under her spell and to some degree believes her story. 2 weeks ago, let's say, Jack's truck is broken into again, this time in another public parking lot. This now happens the day after Jack puts $2,000 of new tools in the locked tool chest. Someone broke into the truck, found the key to the tool chest and stole all the tools. Jill calls the police and files a report again. What? Jill has to tell the same story again. What a coincidence. Many rumblings amongst family now. Jill showing only digital pay stubs, always out and dumping daughter off at family's house to take care of, and 2 break-ins within just a couple weeks. Jack works very long stints and isn't home that often. Now suddenly, Jack sees a draft on his bank account for $450 by some other chick's name. Tracks this girl down, calls her up and grills her. Finds out Jill met her somewhere in town and has been asking her for rides. Telling her stories of her abusive, controlling husband who won't leave her any money to buy groceries for her daughter. Mostly true, Jack has got a lock on the money, ensuring family money actually goes for food and utilities. But Jill is convincing. Jill's new girlfriend buys it and helps her by cashing a fraudulent check. Jack tells Jill's new girlfriend, who by this time has been contacted by police and is scared shitless, that unless you help me and the cops, I will press charges. Jack now has quite a bit of ammo on Jill and calls her out. You're always in town at your so-called job, you're stealing money, you must be on drugs, etc. Jill under the pressure cracks a bit and says yes, she has a boyfriend in town, that's where she's at during the day, but won't cop to any meth use. Passes drug test. Jack finally says, you idiot. You watch, in 3 days, you're going to see your boyfriend in the paper. Amongst other things. Jack goes home, picks up daughter, drives out of town to my house and spends a few days. Wife and I entertain niece while Jack is on the phone. Jack's first day here finds real boyfriend's name, not the name Jill gave. Jack finds out boyfriend in on parole. Parole for methamphetamines. Jack also calls Jill's new girlfriend again. Finds out she knows more than she said the day prior. She knows Jill's boyfriend. Jack reminds her, if you don't tell the cops everything you know, I will press charges. Jack then calls parole officer on day 2 and says, "Hey officer, just wanted to say. My truck was broken into 4 weeks ago and my gun was stolen. My wife appears to be on meth and she copped to hanging out with this guy, Jerry, let's say. Parole officer, do you know for sure if it was Jerry that broke into your truck?" Jack, I can't be positive, but my truck was broken into again 2 weeks later and more stuff was stolen. Seem like too much of a coincidence. Also, my wife's new girlfriend also knows boyfriend and I can have her call you to tell her what she knows. By the way, here is boyfriend's new address. Jill's new girlfriend, still scared shitless, calls parole officer to help any way she can get out of charges herself. Says, yes, I know Jerry, and lately he's been carrying around a new pistol. Parole officer now has corroborated accounts of a parolee in possession of a firearm, something a parolee by law cannot have. Parole officer calls Jack on day 3 and says, well Jack, I went to the address. Your wife answered, then slammed the door. We had to kick to the door open. Boyfriend was found inside with meth on his person. Both boyfriend and your wife are now in custody. Your wife has been charged with obstruction and we found this pistol. Jack, was it a make, model, with synthetic stocks, and a stainless steel frame with serial number? Parole officer, yes for all the above except that the serial numbers have been scratched off. Our heads were spinning. Jill and her boyfriend are sitting in jail. Boyfriend is a parolee with multiple new felony charges, to name a few, illegal substances, stolen firearm and defacing a firearm. Jill has since been released, but boyfriend, well he's going to be there for a while. Jack's last words to us were, I told her, give me 3 days and you'd see his name in the paper. I'll end it with, I adore both Jack and Jill and hope they can work this out for their future and for their daughters. They're still young and like some of us, late bloomers. The next one is titled, Don't Want to Pay Me. I'll find a way to make you pay someone. This story isn't about me, but my dear old dad. Back in the day, he used to be a plumber. He then went on to join the military where he sustained various injuries, chemical exposure. Anyway, this happened during the time when he was fighting for his disability. On occasion, he would do side jobs just to get by. It was very painful, difficult work for him, but alas, the bills needed to be paid. At the time, he had a neighbor up the road who needed some pretty serious work done in his home and offered to pay my dad a bit over $3,000 for the labor. To be frank, $3,000 was a bit on the low end for the work. But my dad figured, hey, help a neighbor out, and he really needed to make some extra cash. The holidays were coming up, a little over 2 months before Christmas. The guy buys the supplies, my dad does the labor, with promises that he'll be paid when it is finished. You already know where this is going. Surprise surprise, the work gets finished, the guy doesn't pay up. Not only does this guy not pay my dad, but he has the gall to laugh at my dad and ask him what he's going to do about it since the work was under the table. Neighbor be damned, oh was he, my dad, ever upset. I remember when he flat out told me, that son of an idiot might not ever pay me, but he's going to be paying someone those $3,000, just you watch sweets, and he got to work. He couldn't spend a lot of time on his feet but he had quite a few hours to kill, and he started planning this dude's comeuppance. He went to the store and bought a load of jacks, the kind that comes in the game of jacks, with the rubber ball and whatnot. He then proceeded to spend the next couple of weeks sharpening them up and making the ends into little spikes. Every time he would drive by this guy's house, he'd casually toss a handful out the window into this guy's driveway. You can imagine, this guy was constantly getting flat tires and had to continuously repair and replace them. Fast forward to Christmas Day, my dad calls me up cackling hysterically, so I ask him what's up. This is actually one of my favorite memories of him. He tells me, remember that neighbor? The one that screwed me over? Well, I just drove by his house and the wife and the kids are all dressed up for church standing in the front yard by their car and it's got a couple of flats. You see, I think he wised up because he started parking in the grass, but idiot didn't know I threw them in the yard too. I love my dad. The last one is titled, Cheat on Me, a Veteran? I'll come after you. A few years ago, my now ex-wife filed a false restraining order against me. She was living with her boyfriend, we were getting a divorce, in another state at the time, and had decided that a false restraining order was an excellent way to be awarded full possession of the vehicle I had purchased. We only had one key to the vehicle, and she was in possession of both the key and the vehicle. This is important later. I was exceedingly upset that she had knowingly filed a false restraining order, and upon being served, I immediately submitted my appeal and request for a hearing. I contacted my company and had them print off all my Department of Transportation GPS logs, as well as company internal vehicle tracker data. I also printed out my personal GPS tracking data from the navigation system I was using. So not only did I have federally accredited logs showing exactly where I was, or more importantly, was not, I also had two very detailed systems information showing my exact speed, cardinal direction, and other pertinent information, recorded in 2 minutes, and 30-second intervals. After I had compiled my entire body of evidence, I wrote a 3-page testimony to read to the court judge to assist in explaining the entirety of the data, as well as present my side of the appeal. Almost 30 days pass, and I realize that upon adjournment of the case and subsequent exiting of the courthouse, there is a chance I will be able to reach my vehicle before my ex does. With this in mind, I decided to contact the dealership from which I had purchased the vehicle and acquired a second key. As we had only received one key when we purchased the vehicle, I knew she would not expect me to even be capable of driving away in it. So, fast forward a few days to the court date. I had driven across 2 states to attend this court judgment appeal, with all my paperwork, written testimony, and the key to the vehicle. I arrive approximately 4 hours prior to the hearing time, and patiently wait for the magic moment to come. Bad news. It was extremely anticlimactic, as she was a no-show. The judge summarily ruled in my favor, and the restraining order was dismissed. The judge then asked if I had anything further for the court, and if not, I was free to go. So I very politely asked, me, Your Honor, it is my understanding that the restraining order, PPO, is lifted? Judge, yes ma'am. Me, so am I, at this time, able to retrieve my vehicle? Judge, ma'am, as the judge of this courtroom, I am unable to provide you with any form of legal advice. Me, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Judge, however, if you find a seat in the back of my courtroom, my secretary? Court recorder? I don't remember the term, will provide you with a signed order of dismissal for the restraining order, PPO. If you were to be questioned by law enforcement for any reason regarding property or contact, it is best to have this documentation on your person, as the cancellation of the order may not reach the police system until close of business today. The way in which the judge had worded her response was very clear in intent. She could not specifically tell me I was good to retrieve my vehicle, but she was taking the extra time to provide me with the paperwork that gave me a legal opportunity to retrieve my vehicle. So I sat down, and after nearly 10 minutes, the court official that was designated with the task of typing and printing the paperwork got the judge's signature on it and brought it to me. As I put it in my binder of other paperwork and turned to leave the courtroom, the judge called out to me, "Judge, Mrs. BTK." Me, turning in mild surprise, "Yes, Your Honor." Judge, with a devious smile, "Good luck." Now I had to formulate a plan. See, as the ex-wife had not been present for the court proceedings, neither was my vehicle. I had the address for her boyfriend's parents' house, as it was all over the initial restraining order's list of protected properties. And she had accidentally left a notebook with it written upon it when she first left to be with the guy. I decided to utilize Uber to go to the address and check if the vehicle was present at the address. Upon starting the Uber trip, I requested the Uber driver to wait for me at the address after dropping me off, giving her a quick summary of my circumstances and plan, to ensure that I had a witness present for the intended retrieval of my vehicle. Quite simply, to ensure that no false allegations of fictitious activities during the recovery of said vehicle would have a metaphorical leg to stand upon in court. The lady Uber driver was sympathetic to my cause and agreed, even going so far as to give me her personal contact information in the event I required her for a future court appearance. Upon arrival at the address, the vehicle was, indeed, present. The Uber lady waited until I had acquired the vehicle, left the premises, and she followed to be about 2 miles to witness I had left the property completely, and then she went on her way. Bless that lady, she was a saint. So, I make it about a half hour away, and my phone rings. I answered it, and it was my ex-wife's boyfriend, and as you can imagine, he was not happy. He rambled off several vulgarities and other random insulting comments which I entirely brushed off. Then he made a very large and unintelligent mistake. He said, "If I ever see you again, here, or anywhere, I will blow your head off." Now, I'm a veteran. I don't take very kindly on threats to my life. I was upset at him, I was upset at her, and I was just handed a gift-wrapped means of complete and utter destructive revenge. I immediately hung up with him and dialed 911 to report a verbal threat on my life. I headed to the parking lot of a local big box store to meet the responding officer and ensured I didn't leave until I had a case number, attached written statement, and the reporting officer's identification information. I completed my trip to my home state, and the following Monday, this was all on a Friday, I went to my local courthouse and filed for an emergency restraining order, PPO. The judge that was available to hear my case for an emergency order was, interestingly enough, the same judge handling the divorce. She listened to the case I provided, reviewed the police report information I provided, and issued the requested emergency order. Doesn't sound like a pro-revenge, does it? Well, my ex-wife was living with the guy in his parents' basement. The restraining order, PPO, issued by the judge protected me, my property, and my spouse from him. See, we were still legally married, so I was legally able to list her as a protected party. When the restraining order was served, he couldn't be within 600 feet of my now ex-wife. As she lived with him in his parents' basement, he wasn't the one that had to leave, she was. But she no longer had my vehicle. She lost her brand new job. She wasn't able to get to school, so she failed her college course, but was stuck with the student loans for it anyway. She was now homeless, vehicleless, jobless, kicked out of college for non-attendance, penniless, as she is atrociously bad with finances, and to top it all off, she was nearly 4 months pregnant with his kid. Moral of the story? Don't duck off a lesbian veteran. I don't like to play games. I will go out of my way to avoid playing ducking games. I will bend over backward to make sure I don't have to play games. But if you force my hand into playing the aforementioned ducking games, I will not be the one that loses the game. Which is something I told her verbatim on our 3rd or 4th date. Guess she forgot. Thanks for listening.